is number 2 on your worksheet, just a couple of examples for you. Number 2 says y equals 3 times 4/3 to the x minus 2 plus 1. So our first step is to figure out what are a, b, h, and k. A is the number in front, so a is 3. B is the base of the exponential expression, so b is 4/3. H is the number being subtracted from x up here. Remember, we do the opposite, so h is 2. And k is the number being added at the end, so k is 1. Next thing I'm going to do, looking at this information, because it's exponential, I know that it has to have an horizontal asymptote. Exponentials always have horizontal asymptotes, so now I'm looking to figure out what my horizontal asymptote is. Horizontal asymptote is always y equals k, and so my horizontal asymptote is going to be located at y equals 1. As soon as I have that, I'm going to go ahead and draw it. So there's my horizontal asymptote. Next thing I'm going to figure out is my domain. The domain for exponentials is always all real numbers. And the range is going to be based upon our horizontal asymptote. And our range, being based on the horizontal asymptote y equals 1, is either going to be y is less than 1 or y is greater than 1. It's either going to be above or it's going to be below. Right now, looking at my a, there's no reflection that would make it, because it's positive, not negative, so it's not going to flip over my asymptote. Therefore, I'm predicting it's going to be above it. So I'm going to say that y is greater than 1, that it's going to be above the asymptote. Now, next thing I'm going to do, and if you need to, go ahead and pause and move on to the next section so you can copy down your notes. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move down and create my table. Now, in the table, remember the first column we're starting with the parent function. The parent function is x comma the base, which was 4/3, that was our b, to the x power. So it's always x comma b, whatever the b value is, to the x power. And remember that every parent of an exponential goes through the point 0, 1, so we're automatically going to start with that point. My next job to do is to do the transformations to that point. Remember that you are adding h to the x value, because h is the one that's associated with x up in the exponent. So we are going to take our x value and add 2 to it. So 0 plus 2 is 2. Put a box around it. We're going to be using that value in a moment to plot our point. Now we're going to come over here to the next column. I went ahead and made one column instead of multiple ones. First thing you're going to do is multiply the y by the a, in this case 3, and then you're going to add the k value to that. We multiply first, order of operations. So our y value is 1, and we're going to multiply that by the 3, and then we're going to add 1 to that value, and 1 times 3 is 3, plus 1 is 4. And now we're going to take that point, 2, 4, and we're going to graph it up here on our graph. So I'm going to go over 2, up 4, and put a point. Now I'm going to pick a second point. My second point, I'm going to pick an x value, and then I'm going to raise my 4/3 to whatever that value is. If you don't have anything else in mind, just choose 1. So I'm going to put 1 as my x, which means I'm now going to take 4/3, that was my b, and I'm going to raise that to the first power. Well, 4/3 to the first power is 1, or excuse me, 4/3 to the first power is not 1. 4/3 to the first power is 4/3. Okay, so now I have a second point. Now I'm going to figure out my transformations of that point. So it says add 2 to your x values. So we're going to add 2 to 1, and I get 3. Put a box. I'm going to come over to my y value. I'm going to multiply my y value by 3 and then add 1 to it. So 4/3 times 3. 4 times 3 is 12, divided by 3 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Now I'm going to plot that next point. So 3, 5 is my second point that I am plotting. So over 3, up 5, put a point. Now I need one more point because it asks us to graph 3 points. So you can pick 2, and you can, you'd end up squaring the 4/3. You can pick -1. You just decide what point you want to pick and then plug it in. I'm going to go with -1. But if you want to do 2, that works as well. So if I do -1, then I'm doing 4/3 to the -1 power. Well, anytime you raise something to a negative power, that's telling you to flip it. So 4/3 to the -1 is really 3/4. I take my fraction and I flip it. I do the reciprocal. So 4/3 to the -1 is 3/4. And now I'm ready to do my transformation. So -1 plus h, which is 2, gives me a +1. Now I'm going to take 3/4, multiply by 3. This time it doesn't simplify as nicely. 3 times 3 is 9, divided by 4. I'm going to get 2.25, and I want to add 1 to that. Now it's easier to work with a decimal when you're having to plot points. So I'm going to keep it as a decimal. 2.25 plus 1 is 3.25. So my third ordered pair is 1, 3.25. Okay, so now we're going to plot this point, 1, 3.25. So go over 1, up 3.25, and it's about right there. And so this thing is curving very slightly. Like this. So it's not taking off very strongly because this number is not a whole lot bigger than 1, so it's not going to take off at a really strong pace. But those are the numbers, and that's what you go with. So there you go. Notice it's above the asymptote, so y greater than 1 was correct for our range. Alright, a little bit later I will post a second video, and have a good day.